It is less than 72 hours to Uganda's general election. On the broadcast tonight, we have the latest from the campaign trail in Uganda, among other big stories making headlines in the East African region. Good evening from the KTN News Center. I am Ben Kitili. Bottomline East Africa begins now. Hostile terrain. Uganda's presidential contender Dr. Kizza Besigye briefly detained while on the campaign trail. Election fever. Kenya begins a massive voter registration exercise in readiness for the 2017 polls. And delayed justice. The pain of sexual offense victims in Kenya's 2007 post-election violence exposed in a Human Rights Watch report. Welcome to the program. Chaotic is a word that best describes Uganda opposition leaders' day on the campaign trail in Kampala today. Besigye was briefly detained by authorities after he disobeyed police orders to follow a particular traffic route under their advice. The presidential candidate was supposed to address several rallies in different parts of the capital, Kampala. KTN's Solomon Serwanja has more from the Kampala campaign.
Wandegea, which is a Kampala suburb, turned into a battleground as the Uganda police clashed with supporters of Forum for Democratic Change presidential candidate Dr. Kizza Besigye. This after the men in uniform blocked Dr. Besigye from proceeding to the city center to address a rally in Kafumbe Mukasa in downtown Kampala.
It's guided all the way from Kasangati, coming to Makerere. Now, the development at Makerere is that the Colonel Dr. Kizza Besigye is now not interested in going to Makerere. He wants to head to the city center again. Now, how do you go about that?
Prior to his decision to proceed for the final rally, Dr. Kizza Besigye was scheduled to address a rally at the Makerere University grounds. Besigye, however, cancelled the rally on grounds that he would be late for his final rally in downtown Kampala. Earlier in the day, Dr. Kizza Besigye's procession was similarly dispersed by the police on Ginger Road area, which is located in the central business district.
They are doing is what they have been doing all along, denying citizens their right to move, citizens their right to assemble, citizens their right to influence political opinion. This is what they have been doing all along. And we are determined to regain our rights. We are determined to regain our freedom in this country. Some of us may die, but the country will be free sooner or later.
The key opposition leader was then arrested and whisked away to Kiria Road police station. He was, however, released without any charges and returned back to his home in Kasangati. He, however, returned on the road until he was blocked at the Wandegea police station. These chaotic scenes come barely 2 days to the elections scheduled for the 18th of February. Solomon Serwanja, KTN News, Kampala, Uganda.
Stay with KTN News for the latest. And was this survey across the board, across the country?
So this research, we did it in the 5 regions that were the most affected by the post-election violence: in Nairobi, Rift Valley, Nyanza, Western and Coast. It was not a quantitative study, so we don't have statistics. But what we know is that the Work Commission, which looked at the post-election violence, following reports from some survivors as well as hospital statistics, gave an estimate of 900 cases. Now, we believe this is really an underestimate because many women did not report the rapes during that time due to a number of reasons, including insecurity, that all the women were concerned about is how do I get myself out of here, how do I get my family out of here, again because of stigma, because they feared if they report, then they were going to be, their husbands or other family members were going to know. So many women did not report. We believe that probably the cases are in the thousands.
So many girls and women, according to your report, went through so much pain and they still suffer the consequences. Is there any help from the authorities in terms of trying to find justice for them?
So let me say that actually the suffering that the women are experiencing is largely because the government has forgotten them. The work reports did document some sexual violence and made some recommendations. It also documented the problems that IDPs were facing and made some recommendations. Now the government came up with programs to address the problem of IDPs. Up to date, he has never come up with a national program to address the needs of sexual violence survivors. So their suffering is being enhanced or heightened by the government failure to respond to their needs for medical help, for financial support, for other psychosocial care. In terms of access to justice, we are really not clear how many cases have actually been prosecuted. A matter-agency task force that was formed by the Director of Public Prosecutions claims that there have been 23 convictions for sexual violence. I'm not sure about the clarity of those.
That is like a drop in the ocean.
This is like a drop in the ocean because even if you go by the statistic that 900 cases were recorded by the Work Commission, and then the Matter Agency Task Force reviewed about 200 files that were reported to the police. What happened to the 700 other cases and so many other cases that were not reported? And again, we are not very clear about the reliability of the report by the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions because it's never been public. So we don't know whether it's a final report, but I can tell you the figures presented are very inconsistent and the report is very hard to follow.
Right. You as Human Rights Watch have been to the ground and you've seen the cases, you've talked to the girls and women. What is needed?
Well, if you look at, a lot is needed, to be very honest. But I think what is important right now is to address the immediate pressing needs, and that is the health, the medical needs of these women. Because they have so much pain, both physical and psychological, that some of them have been completely been unable to move on with their lives. Some of the women were saying that they have tried to start small businesses, but because the memory of rape just keeps coming back, they can't even focus, so the businesses are not doing well. Some women are not even able to walk, they are using sticks. Some women have fistula, which really is a very debilitating condition where you are not able to control urinals too. So before anything else happens, the government has to map out those women that have immediate and urgent health conditions and address them. But I think going forward also there's need to comprehensively look at the needs, including the need for livelihood support for these women, the need for support to enable them to take their children to school, the need to give them shelter, but also another category of survivors that has really been forgotten are the children who are born from the rapes. What we found on the ground is that they are facing a lot of stigma, even violence, physical violence and abuse, and that actually some of them have been denied birth certificates by government authorities. So these are some of the issues that can be immediately addressed.
So how many, I'm trying to understand this, how many of these cases were able to be reintegrated back into the society, and how many have not been able to do that?
So we did find cases actually where women found support from their families. In some of the instances, we even interviewed women in the presence of their husbands because they understand what happened to them is not their wife's fault and they are supportive. But in most of the cases, women are being blamed for the rape They are being blamed in cases where they got HIV. They are being blamed in situations where they got pregnant and they have the child. So most of them actually are not wanted in their families. And so these women need immediate help and support.
So the Director of Public Prosecution, why has the office been so slow to try and prosecute? It has been happening on the other offenses, but on the sexual violence, it seems a bit painfully slow. Why would you say that is the case?
Well, I don't think the government has actually made a lot of progress in prosecuting any of the post-election violence offenses. But I think, in my view, it has shown most apathy when it comes to sexual violence, because either it feels that probably this is not an issue, it's not important. Clearly, that is the message that the government is sending to all the women in Kenya, that when you're raped, we will not be concerned because we don't think it's an issue. But the main problem seems to be really lack of political will. I think right from the word go, when we started talking about forming a special mechanism to deal with post-election violence cases, and we have not seen any movement ever since, clearly demonstrate that the government has no will to ensure justice for the many victims of the post-election violence.
Do you see these women ever getting justice?
I believe so. I mean, at a press conference today, one of the survivors was talking about her resilience and the need to be persistent when you're really following up on some of these issues. And she was giving the case of the people who suffered during the Mau Mau time, and it's just recently that they got justice. It's not an easy fight, and I think it will take collaborative effort of advocates like us, survivors themselves, and other Kenyans of goodwill to keep pushing. I think, yeah, I can say that probably we'll see something.
Right.
Yeah.
How many of these girls and women, were raped by somebody they knew, a neighbor,
Yeah.
something like that?
So actually, many women don't know the people who raped them. What was unique about these rapes is that many of them were gang rapes. And as I mentioned before, there was a lot of violence. So women would be hit with a heavy object and you fall unconscious. And when you come back, you find that you're just bleeding, you've been raped, but you don't know how many people raped you or who raped you. In other cases, the attackers concealed their identity, so they painted their faces or wore a cloth on their face, or they tied the women's faces. But there are also instances where women know their attacker. Some of them are their neighbors. They can identify them by face, though not by name. So we have those instances.
When you see the currently Kenyan case at the International Criminal Court, obviously that seeks to find justice for people who are the greatest responsibility. It doesn't deal with the small offenses that happen here. More than 1,000 people dead, a lot of these rapes happening. What comes to your mind when you see Kenya focusing on the big issues and it being so politicized and forgetting about the sexual offenses and other offenses?
Well, that's the problem, really, because through these reports that we launched today, we're actually saying that while our leaders play politics, here are real lives that are being affected. Now, the thing about the case at the ICC, especially William Ruto's case, there were no charges of sexual violence. It was only Kenyatta's case that had charges of sexual violence, and as you know, that has been dropped. So in terms of getting accountability specifically for sexual violence at the ICC, there's little hope there. But I think the way the government is putting a lot of effort, or rather, let me not say the government, the political leaders, a lot of effort defending themselves at The Hague, they should actually put the same effort defending the women here. The other thing I wanted to say about prosecutions is that, right now, a lot of focus by the DPP says that there is no evidence to prosecute these cases. But you have to understand that this is sexual violence that happened during conflict time. So you cannot apply the same standards, the same threshold that you use in ordinary times. And it can only take political will and commitment to justice to say, let's not really demand so much of these women to prove sexual violence happened. What can we do actually to lower the threshold and to apply a methodology that will get us convictions for sexual violence?
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. That's
You're
very
welcome.
informative. Agnes Odhiambo, researcher at Human Rights Watch, just put in perspective to that latest report on the rapes that happened in 2007-2008 post-election violence. You're watching Bottomline East Africa. Many thanks for staying with us. We take a quick break. When we come back, we have more information and news from Somalia. Stay with us.